New Zealand, an island nation isolated from the rest of the world by thousands of kilometres of open ocean. Landscapes forged by titanic forces. Peaks carved by fire and ice. Rugged coastlines and primeval forests. Over millions of years, these islands and neighbouring Australia became extraordinary evolutionary laboratories. Bizarre species found nowhere else on Earth emerged and thrived.
About 70 metres at the bottom.
We're still unlocking the mysteries of New Zealand's oceans. Marine fossils give us clues.
When I look at it, I think this was once living.
There are survivors too, creatures that met every challenge thrown at them. The environment they live in can change in seconds.
Half of that mountain has slipped away.
Massive earthquakes can batter the country.
Where our feet are used to be at the same level as where my hand is now. A tsunami, shockwaves going through the ocean, mudslides flowing down into the depths.
How have New Zealand's marine animals adapted to their unpredictable world? Kaikōura is located on the east coast of New Zealand's South Island. Massive geological upheaval has created this landscape. Because New Zealand sits in the collision zone between the Australian and Pacific geological plates, earthquakes occur frequently. Every rise on the shoreline is the consequence of an earthquake uplifting the land. Beneath the ocean, earthquakes have also had a huge impact, creating a gigantic trench, the Kaikōura Canyon. 60 kilometres long and up to 1,200 metres deep, the canyon leads to a channel that meanders for hundreds of kilometres, splitting the ocean floor. Today, it's one of the richest seabeds in the world and a wildlife haven. Marine ecologist Sharon Goldstein and geologist Julian Thompson regularly visit Kaikōura to check how seismic activity is affecting wildlife. By monitoring fluctuations in animal populations, scientists can gauge the health of an entire ecosystem. The team sets off in search of the canyon's most famous resident. Sperm whales are the world's largest toothed predator. Their primary food source is deep-sea squid. Finding whales is a specialist job. Roger Williams from local company Whale Watch uses a hydrophone, a directional microphone with a conical dish to focus sound. Kaikōura is one of the few locations where sperm whales live year-round. If Roger finds one quickly, it's an encouraging sign all is well with the wider population.
Okay, Mike. He's clicking away nicely.
Toothed whales use sound to hunt prey, emitting loud clicks that bounce back from anything they hit.
He's about half a mile to the northwest.
If the clicks stop, It indicates the whale has stopped hunting and is about to surface for air.
There it is.
This is really exciting. We are above 1,000 meters of water with the most majestic animal beside us. And they stay above the canyon where there's good feeding. Absolutely amazing to see him just breathing here on the surface, taking some time before his next dive.
Sperm whales dive for up to 90 minutes, longer than almost any other marine mammal. They hunt at depths of up to 3,000 meters. At Kaikōura, sperm whales are apex predators in the food chain. If the whale population is thriving, the surrounding marine environment is likely to be healthy.
If you can help me with that, I think I can reach out there.
The basis of the rich food chain here is plankton, small creatures carried along by the ocean's current.
We're going to do a plankton tow. So we'll just attach the net to the boat. We're going to capture the microscopic organisms that are in that surface water. So if they're not here, then the rest of the food chain collapses right up to the large whales that are so unique around this area.
Plankton range from microscopic organisms to shrimps and jellyfish. The tiny plankton are eaten by animals such as crabs and fish, which in turn are eaten by squid, the sperm whale's food.
This is a fantastic sample we've got here. It's full of life. The food chain looks like it's in good health. So if this stuff's in good condition, then we can see why the larger animals are also in good condition and doing well. It's a really nice wee sample.
Movement of the Earth's geological plates doesn't just create ocean trenches, it also forces rock upwards.
What we can see in the distance over there are the Kaikōura ranges, and these mountains have been uplifted over the last several million years, one earthquake at a time.
Follow the peak south from Kaikōura and you reach Fiordland. Scientists here are exploring a very different marine environment. The dramatic landscape of Fiordland was carved by glaciers. When the ice receded some 12,000 years ago, the ocean flooded these glacial valleys to create deep fjords. The most famous of these, Milford Sound, has been described as the eighth wonder of the world. New life forms and marine species are still being discovered in these waters. Working here can be challenging. Fiordland is one of the wettest places in the world.
Can't have a rainforest without rain.
Rainfall can be 250 millimetres a day, over 7 metres a year.
But you can see at the moment where that cursor is, we're in nearly 300 metres of water there.
Parts of Milford Sound are over 400 metres deep. Most of it is unexplored. Captain Rob Swale and ecologist Sean Hadley are leading a marine survey team. It's important work. By understanding the species living here, strategies can be developed to best protect them and the environment.
In the back section, this is all electronics, a few fans, but the tether will take us to 1,000 meters. The only thing that runs through this is fiber optics.
First in are the surface divers, on a mission to find a prehistoric shark. Marine cameraman Steve Hathaway is leading the dive team. Conditions are less than ideal.
Here's Fiordland for you though, isn't it? It's just a lot of rain and the water looks absolutely disgusting on the surface here, but we're expecting it to really open up by the time we go down to about 4 meters.
The surface water is clouded by a natural dye called tannin, found in the dense rainforest vegetation. Rainwater runoff collects tannins from plants and soil, staining fresh water the colour of tea. In the ocean, it sits in a layer, blocking much of the sunlight.
When you're down a little bit deeper and you look up, you've lost some of the colours from the colour spectrum. First colour is going to disappear as red, then orange, and it's making everything look quite green under there.
The lack of light makes plants and animals think they're deeper than they really are. It's a unique environment, home to species usually found living at much greater depths. Water flooding off the mountains of Milford Sound constantly changes the underwater environment. With so much recent rain, the water is particularly murky. We're still discovering what lives in this unique habitat, but the divers have been warned large sharks are present. As they explore, they discover a large outcrop of black coral. The coral is actually white when alive, only becoming black when it dies. Elsewhere, it's unheard of at depths less than 35 meters. A single colony of black coral might live around 4,000 years, one of the oldest continuously living organisms on the planet. In this cold, dark environment, hundreds of species create a kaleidoscope of colour on the rocks. Many are only found in New Zealand. Sea anemones look beautiful, but their tentacles are lethal. Triggered by the slightest touch, they fire a harpoon to paralyse passing fish. The tentacles then guide the victim into the anemone's mouth. Tube-like animals called sea cucumbers lounge on the rocks. They're relatives of starfish and are first seen in the fossil record some 400 million years ago. Like earthworms on land, they feed on tiny particles, breaking them down into even smaller particles for bacteria to feed on. Not all the wildlife is so benign. Deep below is a seven-gilled shark, a species known to attack divers.
For me, one of the stars of the show down here is seven-gilled sharks. They're very prehistoric looking. And I think one of their tactics for catching food is using ambush. They'd actually sneak up on us and all of a sudden they'd come from behind you and just shoot past.
Most sharks have 5 gills. However, as its name suggests, this ancient species has 7. They evolved 145 to 200 million years ago, and today remain virtually unchanged from their ancient relatives. They grow up to 3 meters in length and commonly feed on seals and dolphins. Divers need to be wary of them. 7-gill sharks are stealthy hunters, making very little movement until dashing into strike. Researchers believe 7-gills undertake long-distance migrations to breeding grounds in the open ocean. Above water, weather conditions are rapidly deteriorating. Because the research vessel can't get close to the rocks, a small boat has been launched. It's now up to Paul, the dive supervisor, to guide the divers in.
Okay, so it's too windy here at the moment. We've got 40 knots plus. We're going to transfer them back onto the boat further down the fjord.
A lot of the time it can be calm when you put them in, and then within 10, 15 minutes, all of a sudden you can have 50, 60 knots. It's just one of those places that can change very, very quickly.
Those sharks are definitely very stealthy. The one time I turned around, I'm filming the surface, turn around, there's two right behind me. How's that?
Awesome.
Your first 7-gill sharks, eh?
Incredible.
A lot of people get quite relaxed around them, and probably too relaxed when you've got an animal that is known to pack attack seals. If you can catch a seal in the water, you're a very, very capable animal.
With the divers safely back on board, remote-operated cameras can be lowered. The fjord is 400 meters deep. Nobody knows what they'll discover.
So you can see here, we're right even against this wall here, we're in 300 meters. And, obviously none of this has ever been explored before.
The camera feeds to a viewing room.
That's 240 there. ...270 meters and we've hit the bottom. Wow. There's a lot of fish down there, considering 275 meters there.
Oh, these are very deep water species.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
It'd be interesting with that dark water layer, what would be the equivalent in a normal ocean, whether that's 800 meters deep or something. Like these species are living a lot shallower than normal.
These fish are rat tails, a species that existed alongside the dinosaurs. Rat tails are usually found at depths of over 4,000 meters. Here, they live at 200. Like many deep-sea fish, their large eyes are very sensitive. Rat tails have chemical receptors on their head and lips, which are used to locate food. They aren't fussy eaters and are happy to feed on anything from worms to carrion.
It's a hagfish, I think.
Hagfish are as ancient as rat tails. They're another living fossil.
So these guys have a defensive mechanism. When something grabs them, they produce a lot of mucus, but they're completely blind and they've got really good smell.
Amazingly, they're the only living creature with a skull but no backbone. Very little is known about many of New Zealand's deep-sea creatures, which makes surveys like this all the more important. With the boundaries of deep-sea exploration being pushed ever further, it's likely new species will be discovered. As the ROV returns to the surface, an inquisitive seven-gilled shark comes in to investigate. At the same time these sharks shared the ocean with dinosaurs, another voracious predator roamed the marine world. In New Zealand, only fossils of this creature exist today. But in Australia, a population still lives in the warm environment. Here, the waters are tropical, just as they were in New Zealand before the country started slowly drifting south. Northern Australia is known as the Top End, a vast area of marshes and muddy estuaries, and renowned for its massive saltwater crocodiles. It's also home to a giant prehistoric fish. It's easy to see why this strange-looking creature is named the sawfish. Once it was common, but its distinctive snout has long been a popular trophy for hunters. It's now one of the rarest fish in the world. The Northern Territory Wildlife Park is home to captive sawfish. Marine biologists hope their research here will assist efforts to save this critically endangered species from extinction. Shale Martin manages the facility for the Parks and Wildlife Commission.
So sawfish are really fascinating. They're a draw card species to our aquarium. Because of their size and their unique features, sawfish are also amazing from an evolutionary perspective. They're roughly halfway between a ray and a shark.
Like sharks, skates and rays, sawfish have a skeleton made of cartilage. It's lightweight but strong, allowing these fish to grow very large. The sawfish snout looks as if it's armed with teeth. In fact, the teeth are sharp scales. When it detects prey, the sawfish attacks and kills by thrashing its jagged snout from side to side. This sawfish is now almost 3 meters long and will double in length as it matures. But even larger sawfish once lived in New Zealand. The fossil record reveals that Onchopristis, a giant sawfish, grew up to 8 meters long. They lived between 145 and 65 million years ago. Their eventual decline led to the evolution of today's marine giants. For well over 100 million years, giant marine reptiles like the plesiosaur dominated the world's oceans. 10 meters long and snake-necked, they were formidable predators. Until a catastrophic event occurred, instantly changing the course of evolution. 65 million years ago, a 10-kilometer wide asteroid struck Earth. The resulting climate change event contributed to the mass extinction of dinosaurs. New environments and habitats became available and new species emerged. One such group was whales. To discover more about the evolution of New Zealand's whales, you head away from the sea to remote mountain valleys. The Waitaki region of the South Island is a world-renowned fossil hunting location. "25 million years ago, this area looked very different. Most of New Zealand had sunk beneath the ocean. Only a few small islands remained above the waves. Today we see what was once the floor of a tropical ocean. The evidence is limestone cliffs. Limestone is formed from the remains of shells and other marine organisms.
Look at this, guys. We have these prominent shell beds. Each one marks the old sea floor. They're stacked up one on top of the other. This rock was formed far from land. If you scrape a little bit off, like this, tiny little grains of sand.
The father of geological research in New Zealand, Alexander Mackay, first discovered this site in 1880. The rock contains immaculate ancient whale fossils. Professor Ewan Fordyce from New Zealand's University of Otago has been studying these fossils for over 30 years, gathering clues to throw fresh light on whale evolution. When marine animals die, they fall to the sea floor, where they are scavenged and disappear.
This is the mother lode.
But on occasion, some are buried beneath the surface, eventually turning to stone.
Bit of shell bed there, guys. Aha. This is what we really want. It looks like bone. Actually, there's some there and here. I'll bet these are jawbones, actually. It's got the characteristic oval shape, and it looks like the other jawbone is right next to it. So this is what we want.
So how much rock are we going to have to take off?
Half a cubic metre, not much.
Unlike most limestone, the bedrock in South Canterbury wasn't buried deep in the ground and compressed. It's so soft that Ewan has developed a rapid method of excavation. Cutting into the rock with a chainsaw. To make sure he doesn't damage it, Ewan leaves plenty of room around the fossil. Very occasionally, entire skeletons are found. But on this occasion, as the rock is cut away, only small pieces of skull are revealed.
Yeah, that looks good. We can see bits of bone there. Here, up there, that's great.
The fossil tells a story.
We know that modern whales, when they die, bloat up with gas a bit and bob around in the water, and they are gradually scavenged by sharks and the like. But if they're bobbing around for long enough and decomposing, bits of them fall off onto the bottom while the rest of the body drifts away elsewhere. And that's my guess with this specimen.
An old car bonnet makes a perfect sledge to drag the heavy rock onto the trailer.
Whoa, stop!
After 25 million years, the whale skull departs on another journey. Ewan's laboratory is testament to a lifetime of research.
Hi, Sophie. Let's have a look at that ear bone that you turned up. My favourite bone. There was one bone that we could get from a fossil whale to actually say what the species is and how it lived and how big it was, and this is it. And it's species specific. This ear bone's from a type of whale called Kaikōura, and there are several species. One of them lived around 26 million years. At the time when New Zealand was largely flooded and underwater, about getting on to halfway back to the age of the dinosaurs.
The university cellars are a fossil storeroom, allowing us to travel millions of years back in time.
The very earliest whales were toothed whales, and they would eat hard prey, fish, penguins, and the like. This animal in front of us is actually a baleen whale. It didn't really have any significant teeth in life, and it would have taken mouthfuls of water and taken food from the water. It ate little prey like krill, for example. And it was a very successful lifestyle, helped the whales to get big in terms of their evolutionary history. The biggest animals eating the littlest food.
This whale lived around 25 million years ago. New Zealand's oceans were teeming with life at that time. It was a perfect environment for giant predators. The most efficient and fearsome of them all was a giant shark.
This is a megalodon tooth. This tooth, from one of the bigger megalodons ever recorded, is from New Zealand. It's not a world record breaker, but it's pretty close. We know that these animals got to perhaps 20 metres long. That's based on the size of teeth and vertebrae. And a 20-metre long megalodon would weigh about 100 tonnes. So that is just absolutely monstrous compared to a modern great white shark.
Megalodons weighed in at least 10 times heavier than today's great white shark. They were arguably the most efficient predator to ever swim in the oceans. But around 2 million years ago, they disappeared. One theory suggests a new marine predator evolved, a gigantic dolphin still living today. Orca grow to almost 10 metres and can weigh up to 10 tonnes. Because of their size, they're sometimes known as killer whales. They have conical-shaped teeth to catch fast-moving prey. They also have extremely efficient hearing. Yet their greatest asset may be cooperation. Orca are extremely intelligent and have learned to herd their prey together by hunting as a pack. Orca's ancestors may have competed with Megalodon for prey, and their success seems to have contributed to the decline of the Megalodon. The extinction of Megalodon may have allowed whales to evolve to become even larger than their ancestors. Today, New Zealand is a haven for whales, but they still face challenges. The Kaikōura Marine Reserve is renowned for its resident sperm whales. Unfortunately, the region has just been hit by a life-changing event, and nobody knows how it will have affected the whales. A recent earthquake in New Zealand's Kaikōura region rated 7.8 magnitude. A powerful earthquake by world standards. Many roads in the area were closed due to landslips. Marine ecologist Sharon Goldstein and geologist Julian Thompson are here to check how the event has impacted the wildlife. With them is specialist technician Justin Harrison. It's immediately apparent the tide line has moved a significant distance.
So somewhere here is the present high tide mark, is that right?
So the high tide used to go way up to the car park, and all of this would be underwater.
As the coastline was uplifted, meters of water was being shed off these upraised areas. According to the locals on land, that was an incredibly loud waterfall of sound.
When the ocean floor uplifted, many creatures were stranded. Sharon and Mike Morrissey from the Department of Conservation have come to check on a nearby seal colony. The impact of such a powerful earthquake is bound to have caused massive change. The geologists are here to measure the uplift.
That's a great sight to see. They're up-ups.
Yep.
And they're playing.
Yeah, after all that's happened, they look really good, don't they?
They look healthy. We can see at least 10 just in this little area.
There's a lot more pups here than usual.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's probably because of the earthquakes and they've gone away from the places where they were normally pupping. It's hard to say until we look at those other areas, but we'll have a good idea then.
Yeah.
Okay, how's that looking?
That's about 80 centimetres.
Okay. 80 centimetres of uplift in this area means that the whole peninsula came up by that amount. So this whole region has been shifted in a few seconds of time. It's a massive event.
There are a number of seal colonies on the coast, and Sharon fears some have been severely impacted.
Further north of Kaikōura, we have the largest breeding area for the New Zealand fur seal, and they've had a harder time in the earthquake. Not only did they have the shaking and the uplift, but we also know there are very large landslides right on their colony area.
As you go northward from the point where this earthquake originated, you see actually a greater and greater impact. There are several large faults, and in these areas, that's where the uplift has been most pronounced. Some of these faults are quite stark, quite dramatic gashes, almost like a knife has cut through the landscape in quite an extraordinary and exceptional way.
We're just flying over where the fault cuts across the road and the railway. And you can see how the road has been displaced sideways as well as the railway. This earthquake produced about 100,000 landslides. Yeah, Sharon, that's the seal colony down there that you've been studying.
Yep, if we just turn around from here at any point.
The seal colony has been hit by a huge rockfall, and there's nowhere the helicopter can land.
Yeah, make sure we can get those rocks over there.
A thermal imaging camera is used to assess how many seals remain.
There's some lighted areas up here now.
You're picking them ones up back there?
Yeah, we're picking up a few rots actually. A few rots here.
There's quite a lot of pups
here.
It's good news, but it looks as if many seals have left and moved to other colonies. Their survey mission continues northward.
How's this rock here? Is that all right?
They land in a small area where the uplift seems particularly dramatic.
It's hard to believe that that didn't exist before the earthquake. That is the fault going through there, one of many of these faults that have crisscrossed this area. Well, the whole area has actually been uplifted, and the far side of the fault is uplifted even more. Should we go and have a look?
Lead the way.
It's not often that a geologist can see a new feature in the landscape just appear before their eyes like this. It's just extraordinary to be here, actually. Wow, it's so amazing to see this. So where our feet are used to be at the same level as where my hand is now. So that's, what do you think?
2 meters?
About 2 meters. 2 meters of uplift. But don't forget, it's a fracture in the earth going right down, probably 10, 15 kilometers into the crust. And all of that rock has moved on one side relative to the other. The rupture across here would have just happened in seconds. And the ripping apart of those rocks is what created the powerful shaking of this earthquake. As the coastline was uplifted, meters of water was being shed off these upraised areas.
That's devastating.
So the low tide level would have been here somewhere and all of this below the water.
Yeah, well, this seaweed is subtidal. That should be underwater.
According to the locals on land, that was an incredibly loud waterfall of sound.
True subtidal. None of this would ever have come out of the water.
Many creatures were close to the rocks or hidden in the rocks, were just stranded out of the water and died.
Already we can see the power shells. See the... These sea urchins just sitting, waiting for the tide to come back in.
Which it never will.
Not up here.
Just is it's like a moonscape.
Lots of devastation, but the water and the new intertidal zone is out there. The organisms, we have to remember, will recover. It's not the end of them. They'll just start in a new place. There'll be a big shift.
This area is a dramatic reminder that New Zealand's geology is incredibly unstable. Yet its animals are able to adapt to massive change that sometimes happens in just seconds. There's another question to answer. Whales are very sensitive to vibrations. Has the earthquake driven them away from Kaikōura?
I was in Kaikōura for the recent earthquake, and on land it was loud and there was a very violent shaking. The vibrations under the water I felt much more, so it would have come from all around them and it probably would have been quite scary.
What depth are we at, Mike?
Just on 1,000 metres.
Okay, I'll have a listen over here.
Roger Williams has joined them again. If the whales are still around, he's the man to find them.
Woo. So calm and majestic.
Incredible.
Do you know who this guy is?
Yeah, he's a whale that we've been seeing feeding off our coastline now for about 20 years plus.
Kaikōura is a very special place. It is unique, and just the young males that are resident here, most likely because the canyon is so close to shore, there is so much food here for them, why would they go anywhere else?
Seismic events are common in New Zealand. The forces that isolated it continue to shape the country and its wildlife today. In another 100 million years, New Zealand will look very different. Earthquakes will continue to shape the landscape. Parts of New Zealand may again sink beneath the waves. Some species will adapt. Others may disappear and become part of the fossil record. One thing is certain. Whatever the changes, New Zealand is likely to remain home to some of the most unique animals on Earth. New Zealand, an island nation isolated from the rest of the world by thousands of kilometres of open ocean. Landscapes forged by titanic forces. Peaks carved by fire and ice. Rugged coastlines and primeval forests. Over millions of years, these islands and neighbouring Australia became extraordinary evolutionary laboratories. Bizarre species found nowhere else on Earth emerged and thrived. Many of New Zealand's native species share an unusual characteristic: gigantism. To discover why some species grow to such large sizes, scientists are exploring their remote habitats. Birds, fish, and insects grow to giant proportions. Why did some species evolve to be so large? Just 80 kilometres from New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, lies the most significant wildlife sanctuary in the country. This is Little Barrier Island, known to the indigenous Māori people as Hauturu or Toi. The remains of a volcano that erupted from the ocean 3 million years ago. Just 6 kilometres across, this little island is the only home of an ancient giant of the insect world. The Wetapunga. Little Barrier is so special that for more than 100 years, the government has tightly controlled access. But a research team has been granted permission to investigate one of its most unique residents. Lee Joyce is a Department of Conservation ranger.
It's an arc, really. It's like New Zealand used to be, and I always say it's like it could be in the future as well, and hopefully should be. It's like stepping back in time. You know, you go into the forest and it feels ancient.
Lee is accompanied by Naracoorte, the official government ambassador for New Zealand's endangered species.
I'm particularly interested in discovering some of our really special invertebrates. And in particular, I really want to see a wetapunga, which are thought to be the heaviest insect in the entire world.
Weta are an ancient relative of grasshoppers and crickets. Their ancestors evolved 190 million years ago. Over 70 different species are known and live everywhere from the coast to the mountains. But weighing more than a hamster, the little barrier wetapunga is the biggest of them all, and the rarest. It's the mystery of their size that brings Nicola and Lee to this island. Their goal is for the giant wetapunga to be reintroduced onto the mainland. But that will only happen if they're successfully protected here. The subtropical climate of Little Barrier allows lush forests to thrive. These are Nico, the southernmost palm in the world. They're also a good place to look for giant insects. Wetapunga are nocturnal and hide under dead palm fronds during the day.
I got one, got one. Whoa, he's making an escape. There we are. A male.
Oh, you found one?
Yeah.
Oh, wicked. He's a beauty.
He is lovely. Look at the colour on him.
Yeah, he's quite dark, eh?
He's amazing.
He's quite feisty. Whoa, I like your head, Nick.
It is only since humans arrived in New Zealand 800 years ago that wetapunga have become endangered. Their existence today is remarkable. They have survived for 180 million years, outliving the dinosaurs.
I know that early Māori called them wetapunga, which basically meant the god of ugly things, that they were a bit frightening. But in fact, you know, he's fairly docile. He's not biting, he doesn't want to hurt us.
They look heavily armoured and dangerous, but wetapunga are in fact harmless. This has led to their numbers being driven to the edge of extinction by introduced predators like rats. Since the early 20th century, they ceased to exist in the wild outside of this island. Their only defence is to raise their spiked legs in the hope it will scare predators away, or make a desperate jump for freedom. Other giants of the invertebrate world can be found throughout the country. This 20-centimetre long stick insect has evolved to perfectly mimic a twig and hide from the eyes of predators. Giant centipedes prowl the forest floor. They can grow 25 centimetres long and kill their prey with poison-tipped claws. Other unusually large predators take their time to kill. Giant Palephanta snails also live on the forest floor. These creatures first evolved about 200 million years ago and belong to the oldest family of carnivorous land snails on Earth. They can grow 90 millimetres across, the size of a man's fist. Their favourite prey are giant native earthworms, which they devour like living spaghetti. It's a slow and gruesome way to go. The worm isn't being swallowed whole. The snail has a tongue covered in tiny teeth, which it uses like a belt sander to scrape chunks of flesh off. The giant worm is ground down while still alive. New Zealand's extraordinary giant invertebrates are found nowhere else in the world. It's a phenomenon known as island gigantism. The research team carefully release their male wetapunga. To fully appreciate the scale of these insects, Nick and Lee continue onwards in search of a female, which can grow even bigger. What caused New Zealand's animals to evolve to be so much larger than their relatives across the oceans? In its nearest neighbour, Australia, the same evolutionary forces are at play, but with very different results. To understand the giants that evolved in New Zealand, we need to travel to its nearest neighbour, 2,000 kilometres away across the Tasman Sea. A very different land, dry, flat and vast, Australia. Just like New Zealand, it was isolated for tens of millions of years. In both countries, this resulted in the evolution of iconic wildlife. Although similar forces are at work in both nations, Australia's animals took a very different direction. Naracoorte in South Australia is famous for two things: wine and caves. When the owners of a local vineyard were excavating, they got a surprise. Their bulldozer fell through the ground. Underneath the vineyard, a graveyard, sealed for hundreds of thousands of years.
This is a very special cave. It was found about 12 years ago, but at the time we just didn't have the capacity to do it justice.
Paleontologist Dr. Liz Reed and her partner Steve took a quick look in the cave and realised it held something very special. The vineyard owner sealed up the entrance to protect it, and no one has been inside it since, until today.
And we're now at the point where we can go in and excavate. So this is incredibly exciting because we have no idea what we'll find.
Dr. Reed is a paleontologist from the University of Adelaide. Her team hopes to find the remains of a group of giant animals unique to Australia, extinct giant marsupials known as megafauna. Australia is a land ruled by marsupials, a group of mammals whose biology is so primitive they use pouches instead of placentas to develop their young. In Australia, there are more species than the rest of the world combined. Some are fierce predators, like the infamous Tasmanian devil. Others are leaf eaters, like Australia's national symbol, the kangaroo. The red kangaroo is the largest marsupial alive on Earth. But not long ago, Australia was ruled by gigantic versions of today's marsupials. The team believes the remains of these mega marsupials could be inside the cave and might shed light on these extinct species. "30 million years ago, Naracoorte was at the bottom of a tropical ocean. Sediments turned into limestone, which was then lifted up above the surface again. Over millions of years, rainwater eroded the rock and created a maze of caves. Sinkholes formed in their roofs. These holes became deadly traps for animals living on the surface. Once they fell in, there was no way out. When Liz and Steve saw the main fossil chamber for the very first time, they knew it was a treasure trove of fossil remains. there are bones everywhere. Now they will excavate them and identify the giant marsupials that died in this lonely underground tomb.
Okay, so when we first came in, Jess, some of the things we noticed, this extinct kangaroo skull over here, see the tooth row just sticking up? Yeah. And then panning around, big limb bones on the surface. It's going to take a little while before we get there, but that's a really nice one.
Desperate animals who had fallen into the cave would have tried to get out, but there was no escape. Claw scratches line the cave walls, still perfectly preserved after 500,000 years. Every square inch will be painstakingly studied. It will take years to cover the whole cave.
Some people might think it looks quite tedious and boring sitting there in a cave for hours on end digging one little square of sediment, but that area I was just digging, I found so many bones of multiple species. So I often think of it like a jigsaw puzzle, except I don't start with a box with a picture. I have to try and piece it together myself. But what I'm digging up are pieces of history, pieces of time. So for me, that is so intriguing to be rebuilding part of Australia's history that's now lost.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to lift it, Liz.
Steve has found the skull of an extinct kangaroo, perfectly preserved hundreds of thousands of years after it fell into the cave.
Okay.
Excellent work, Steve.
Nice skull.
Really stunning. It's a very young juvenile of an extinct short-faced kangaroo. This would have still been in its mother's pouch when it entered the cave, probably.
One of the main differences between marsupials and other mammals is how they bring up their young. Marsupial babies are born much earlier and crawl into their mother's pouch to finish their development. Nearby lie the remains of an adult kangaroo, possibly the baby's mother.
Wow, it's a nice specimen too, isn't it?
It's an excellent specimen.
The team has barely scratched the surface, but they've already made some striking finds.
Even better, yeah, the other half is in there.
They take the results of their day's work back to the lab at the Museum of South Australia. This new cave will add to the remarkable finds in other Naracoorte caves excavated over the last 100 years. Already dozens of bizarre giant animals have been discovered. Among them, the largest marsupial carnivore ever to live, the marsupial lion. Weighing as much as 160 kilograms, marsupial lions would have easily rivaled modern tigers in size.
And lots of things about its skeleton tell us what it did. The most striking would be those teeth, the very sharp blade-like premolar tooth that acts like scissors, just slices flesh off its prey. Very powerful animal and certainly a formidable predator.
The marsupial lion preyed upon giant kangaroos, and the largest marsupial to ever live, a massive wombat called Diprotodon that weighed almost 3 tons. And as Australia became drier, gigantism was a good survival strategy.
Getting big is a really good way to deal with being able to eat lots of relatively poor nutrition food. If you're big, you can deal with times when the resources are low and you've got relatively poor food to eat.
But why were these giant animals only found in Australia? Paleontologists like Dr. Reid are only just beginning to understand Australia's extinct marsupials. This new cave discovery will provide vital new pieces of the puzzle.
It would be impossible to overstate how important this cave is, and it's been a surprise for us. It exceeded our expectations. There's so much more bone, more species than we thought. This is an incredible find, one of the most significant in decades, and it really can tell us a lot of things about the megafauna and build on this amazing story that we know from the Naracoorte region.
Another nice piece. So that makes that one complete.
That's beautiful.
There are hundreds more caves in the Naracoorte area that have never been studied. Who knows what secrets they might hold? South Pacific neighbours New Zealand and Australia are home to some of the most dramatic animal examples of island gigantism. A phenomenon where wildlife evolved to massive proportions on island environments. But why did Australia end up with giant marsupials while New Zealand has giant birds and insects? To solve this mystery, we must travel back to an ancient age when the two lands were joined together. In the wildest reaches of New Zealand, dense rainforests are dominated by ancient plant species whose lineage goes back 150 million years to the Jurassic period. The kings of the canopy are a group of primitive trees called podocarps. Towering over 60 metres tall, the height of an 18-storey building, and capable of living for 1,000 years. Before humans arrived, forests of ancient podocarps once covered New Zealand. Now, only a few precious fragments are left. In Pureora, the main forest canopy is 30 metres high, but it is regularly pierced by giants that tower above the rest. There are 15 native species in New Zealand, and the tallest and most ancient is the kahikatea. Andrew Harrison is a professional arborist. He studies and looks after trees for a living and teaches others.
Whoa.
Today, he has brought some of his students with him to Pureora to help him climb an ancient giant.
It makes me feel when I come into these places that I'm going back in time, that this is what New Zealand would have once been like before humans were here. In fact, some of these individual trees would be older than human history in New Zealand. It's uplifting for me to come and be in the forest, and even more exciting if I get to climb them.
Every rope must be double-checked. Andrew is going to be 50 metres off the ground in an 800-year-old tree.
Okay. As far as climbing disciplines go, it is unique climbing a living organism. There is a different feel to it, and especially when the wind blows, you're moving around with the tree, you've got to put your faith in the tree that that's not going to let you go.
My name's Catherine Kirby, and I am an ecologist that studies epiphytes, which are plants that live on other plants, so primarily plants that grow up trees.
These forest giants don't just feed birds. Their limbs support unique forest ecosystems 50 metres above the ground. Catherine has come to Pureora Forest because of the size of these podocarp trees.
Because Pureorder is so dense with podocarps, it's awesome for a canopy explorer like myself because the species in the world up in the treetops is like no other. Look at this.
These aerial gardens start slowly and may take hundreds of years to form. Mosses and small ferns are the first to settle on a bare branch, and as they build up, they provide a base for larger plants.
Once the canopy community is established, the canopy soil starts to build and the ecosystem really thrives, and you can get lots of insects and birds and reptiles living in amongst those plants. So it is quite a unique ecosystem up in the canopy.
Climbing these trees that are older than human history in New Zealand, it's a special feeling that it's probably unlikely that people have climbed that tree that we climbed this afternoon. We're going to a place where no one's ever been before.
The story of Pureorder's podocarps speaks to the dramatic differences between the giants of New Zealand and neighbouring Australia. Fossil pollen has revealed some species have remained unchanged for 180 million years. Back then, New Zealand was joined to Australia as part of the supercontinent of Gondwana. And ruled by a group of giant reptiles, the dinosaurs. Gigantic four-legged browsers called titanosaurs were the largest animal to ever walk the earth, reaching high into the canopy with their extraordinary necks. Titanosaurs grew 40 metres long, 20 metres tall, and weighed as much as 77 tonnes. Dinosaurs dominated all of Gondwana, including ancient New Zealand and Australia. But since then, the two landmasses have taken very different evolutionary paths. 80 million years ago, New Zealand split from Gondwana and drifted away on its own into the Pacific Ocean. Australia remained attached to the supercontinent and a few million years later was colonised by small, ancient marsupials. Then one of the most destructive events in history occurred. "65 million years ago, a large asteroid struck the Earth, causing a chain of events that drove almost every large species to extinction. Being huge didn't help the dinosaurs. Debris from the extraterrestrial collision blocked out the sun, smothering the forests and wiping out most of the planet's food supply. The only survivors were small animals which needed less food. Small marsupials survived the mass extinction, and 45 million years ago, Australia broke away, taking them with it. Modern mammals hadn't reached Australia yet, so the marsupials had it to themselves. With the dinosaurs gone, they had no competition and evolved to become giants. New Zealand had separated before the arrival of mammals. Unlike Australia, there were no marsupials. However, there were birds. Conditions in their new home led many to become huge. The giant moa was the tallest bird ever known, up to 3.5 metres at full stretch. These giant browsers were hunted by the largest bird of prey in Earth's history, Haast's eagle. Both moor and giant eagles became extinct when the first humans to reach New Zealand hunted them into oblivion. Other giant birds are still alive. The Kaikōura is a primitive parrot, the heaviest in the world, that evolved to climb in the forest canopy and feed on the fruit of podocarp trees. The takahe is another sturdy bird that is also the giant of its family. Water birds, known as rails. And until humans arrived 800 years ago, there were no rodents scavenging on the forest floor. So weta took their place. Since it had broken away from the rest of the world before mammals reached it, New Zealand became a land of giant birds and insects. And also fish. An extraordinary freshwater fish also joined the list of island giants. The same forces that tore Gondwana apart also uplifted dramatic mountain ranges in the South Island, which became covered in ice and snow during the Ice Age. Glaciers carved out huge gouges in the land, which filled with water, forming narrow lakes. The northernmost of these glacial lakes is Lake Rotoiti, home to New Zealand's very own lake monster, the largest of its kind in the world. Dr. Don Jellyman is an expert in these giants and is on a quest to figure out why they grow so large. Deep below him lurk the objects of his search, an ancient and unusual group of fish called freshwater eels, or as the Maori call them, tuna.
We have two main species of eel in New Zealand, the shortfin and the longfin. And it's the longfin which we mainly find here because it's the species that goes well inland. And it also grows to a much larger size than the shortfin, anything up to 2 meters long. And it's quite probably the largest of any of the freshwater species worldwide. But this eel, the longfin, is endemic. It's found only in New Zealand.
Don has been studying the unique eels to find out more about their population and habits and help conserve and protect them. The fish are threatened, just like the country's other giants. The giant eels lurk deep in the lake during the day. But as the shadows lengthen, they begin to emerge from their hiding places and hunt. Early the next morning, it's time to check the net. It's bulging with slimy, long-fin eels. To calm the eels down while he measures them, Don uses a natural anaesthetic, clove oil. It gently tranquilizes the giant eels.
Oh, she's a beaut. She's just over 1 metre long, 101 centimetres. And we know they only grow at about 1 centimetre a year, so she'd be pushing 100 years old. Quite amazing, isn't it? Slow growth rates in these cold, glacial-formed lakes. You don't have much of a feeding zone around the edge because they're so deep. So there's not a huge amount of food, so they grow slowly.
And there are much larger eels than this lurking in Lake Rotoiti. They've been reported as growing up to 2 metres and weighing up to 25 kilograms. Mysteriously, males never grow longer than 1 metre. The giants are all females. Eels can absorb oxygen through their skin. This one will happily breathe out of water as long as Dawn keeps her skin wet. Longfin eels are the top predators in New Zealand's many lakes and rivers. They've evolved incredible senses to help them find their prey.
You can see the nostrils there, ones that people call the horns, where the water is taken in and it comes out this other little nostril just in front of the eye. Because eels have a phenomenal capacity to smell. It's a very, very highly developed sense. They kind of call them the equivalent of freshwater bloodhounds, because they just need one molecule of some substance in the nasal cavity and they can detect it.
Once they've sensed their prey, they wait patiently until it's close and then make a surprise attack at blinding speed.
Yeah, she's starting to get a bit wriggly. I was going to show you her teeth, but I'm not sure I want to put my fingers down her throat at the moment. There we go. Now, those teeth are very small and facing backwards, so you can put something down there, but you try and pull it out, and it's almost impossible. So they're small grasping teeth, which means they're great for coming up to a piece of prey and they'll latch onto it, and if it's too big, they'll grab it and start twisting. And they can do 10 or 12 revolutions a second, so they spin quite rapidly. And those little teeth there just really get a good grip. And certainly you wouldn't want a big eel like this grabbing hold of you. But there are stories of them coming up and nudging people, especially in dirty water and turbid water. They'll just come up, trying to see what's lurking around. I've only ever been bitten a couple of times, and it's been my own fault on both occasions.
There are 19 species of freshwater eel in the world, found on all the major continents. Yet New Zealand's female longfins are almost twice the size of their continental cousins. Why have they been the subject of island gigantism and not the males? It turns out living quietly in Lake Rotoiti is only part of this remarkable animal's life cycle. While they live here, they are preparing for an epic journey across the Pacific Ocean. New Zealand's longfin eels are the largest freshwater eels in the world. Females grow much larger than males. Why? Freshwater ecologist Dr. John Jellyman is convinced the secret is their incredible life history. Eels first evolved in the western Pacific Ocean, near present-day Indonesia, and soon spread around the world. When they first reached New Zealand around 20 million years ago, it had already broken away from Gondwana and was isolated deep in the South Pacific. The only other fish in the rivers were small and harmless. These are banded kōkapu, a member of an ancient group called galaxids that first evolved on Gondwana and drifted off with New Zealand when it broke away. They're so primitive, they don't even have scales, just smooth, mucus-covered skin. There are dozens of species in New Zealand, and they form a major part of the long-finned eel's diet. With no predators or competition and plenty of small fish to eat, the eels thrived.
And in New Zealand, they've done particularly well because The other species of native fish are really quite small and often quite uncommon, so it was kind of a wonderful opportunity for eels to arrive and to kind of take over the environments. And so they're found throughout New Zealand, right from lowland swamps and estuaries, right through to our high country lakes.
But there's a catch to living in eel paradise. These eels must make a mysterious and epic voyage back into the tropical ocean to reproduce. They don't let anything get in their way. And they will even travel over land for short distances if they have to.
All freshwater eels are basically a marine species that have invaded fresh water. Now, the significance of that is that they all still spawn in the tropics. So they're marine spawners, and because they originated in the tropics, they go back to the tropics. It means a very long journey, maybe 3,500, 4,000 kilometres, depending where you start from in New Zealand.
The exact location of the Longfin eel's spawning ground is one of the great mysteries of New Zealand natural history. No one has ever seen it, but Don and his colleagues are getting closer and closer to tracking it down by attaching satellite tags to migrating females. They leave the coast of New Zealand and all head in the same direction, northwest, towards the tropical ocean surrounding the Pacific Islands.
And it turns out that our most successful tags, the ones that stayed on the longest, were over towards New Caledonia, between New Caledonia and Fiji. We think that's probably where they spawn.
When they reach their secret spawning ground, males and females mass together and release their eggs and sperm into the water. Then, after possibly spending 100 years building up to this one moment, they die. Their offspring start life as leaf-shaped larvae called leptocephalus. No one has ever seen this stage in New Zealand's longfin eel. The larvae then somehow find their way back to New Zealand over 3,000 kilometres of ocean, carried by wind and currents. Nobody knows how they navigate to their home islands. Another mystery of the longfin.
The leptocephali spends 9 or 10 months at sea, and it comes back towards New Zealand, and then it metamorphoses into the baby eel that we call a glass eel, so a little eel about 6-7 centimetres long, like a miniature adult. They come into freshwater, and then the freshwater life history starts from there.
The young eels can climb 40-metre obstacles. Even waterfalls don't stop them. Sometimes it takes several years for the eels to reach a location suited to them. But once she's safe in a deep glacial lake like this, an eel may spend the next 100 years preparing for the ultimate journey. Don is convinced this is why New Zealand's female longfin eels grow larger and older than any others, as a strategy to increase their success of reproducing.
Is because they're the biggest species around, and they're not really subject to much predation pressure. There's not much that's going to eat you when you get that big. The females can hang around and get very big. And when they do that, they have a very large number of eggs. So a female eel of this size might have 2 or 3 million eggs. But if it delays its migration to the sea to maybe a metre and a half, it might have 20 or 30 million eggs. So big, big benefits. And hanging around, getting old, getting big, lots and lots of eggs. Okay, old girl, we'll put you back.
Any year now, this giant female will decide to begin her one-way 3,000-kilometre journey to New Caledonia. For now, she is safe in Lake Rotoiti and can afford to take her time. She may wait for decades, slowly growing larger and increasing her fat reserves and eggs. An island giant, ready for a mysterious and epic journey. 1,000 kilometres north on Little Barrier Island, the search continues for New Zealand's textbook example of island gigantism. Rangers Lee Joyce and Nicola Torki have already found an enormous male wetapunga. But just like with longfin eels, the females are much bigger.
Found one.
Have you?
Yep. I just found it underneath that thing. There she goes. She was down under there.
She is enormous.
She's beautiful, isn't she?
Let me come around on top of her. Well done. There we go.
Look at that.
Oh, wow. That is
walk onto
something
you.
very special. Wow. It's amazing.
Despite their fearsome appearance, wetapunga are gentle giants.
She is.
She's not that frightening though, is she? Like,
No.
She's not aggressive at all.
Little antennae are just waving around. She's trying to figure out what's going on. You can see the little, we probably can't see, you're probably a little bit too close, but she's got these amazing little quilts on her end of her feet, which actually hang onto your teeth.
Like eels, it's an evolutionary advantage for female wetapunga to grow larger than males so they can produce more eggs and increase their chances of reproducing.
They don't live very long. They only live maybe 2 or 3 years, but in that time she can lay like 300 to 500 eggs. So she looks really kind of ferocious, really, just because of her exoskeleton and the spike that sticks out of the back. The ovipositor it's called. So it looks as though she's like this incredible kind of scary monster, but she's not, she's very docile, she's very gentle, she very rarely bites. She might raise her legs up if she's in alarm, but her ovipositor, the spine out the back, is actually for laying her eggs, and she'll push that down into the ground when the soil's nice and moist, and it splits. Her eggs actually come down the middle, so it's like a little channel, I guess, a little tube that helps you put the eggs underneath the soil deep enough that they won't be disturbed. Yeah, so they're amazing. They're incredible critters.
Okay, shall we pop her in and see how much she weighs? Tricky to get in there.
Okay. Oh, pop that down there. And let her walk in. Like that. Okay.
The 11 species of giant weta are all forest browsers. The wetapunga of Little Barrier Island is the biggest of them all, as heavy as a small mammal or bird.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, yes, 32.8.
I would say definitely heavier than a sparrow.
Yep. And she's been on your head.
Yeah.
The heaviest wetapunga ever recorded weighed over twice the weight of this female, 71 grams, 3 times the weight of a mouse. This is a true island giant.
When people think of New Zealand wildlife, people tend to go straight to kakapo or kiwi, some of the big charismatic megafauna, but it tends to all be birds, and yet our invertebrate fauna is something very, very special. I mean, island gigantism has occurred here because we don't have any native four-legged mammals, and these beautiful things have evolved to fill the niches that in other places things like rodents would take up.
With few threats from predators and no competition from mammals, New Zealand's animals evolved with an eye towards getting big and increasing their chances at reproducing. Throughout its 100-million-year history, New Zealand and its unique wildlife have adapted and evolved. While it's impossible to say what new adaptations the next 100 million hold, for now, New Zealand remains a land of giants.